Aye. Sorry, District Court is reconvened.
Please be seated. Go ahead, Mr. Parrish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Kozak, I don't think we've met before, have we?
We have not.
I just want to ask you a couple of questions before I get started. You know, I looked at your website, and how large is your practice out in Utah?
The size?
Yes.
It's just a solo practitioner. I have one psychometrician, I have a receptionist, and I have a billing staff as well.
Okay. So you, I also looked up, you can punch in if you got paid so much from the state of Iowa, and it pops up on a screen through the, the Iowa website or something like that. Did you do a lot of work for the state of Iowa last year?
Yeah, I had some, I think some private cases, yes.
No, for the state.
Oh, I get, my contract is through the state of Iowa.
Right, and you got paid some money for the state of Iowa last year?
Yes.
How much?
50,000 maybe is a ballpark.
Yeah, and that was all from the Department of Corrections?
I think, Counsel, that maybe some of them have been some private cases too, but I'm not sure.
Okay, but what you're indicating is that $50,000 of the money was work that you did, a majority of it for the state of Iowa?
Yes.
All right. And would that be for the Department of Corrections?
The bulk of it, yes.
Okay. And did you actually do that work from Utah, or did you have to fly back and forth?
Yes, I had to fly back monthly.
And percentage-wise, how much of that is out of your private practice, the $50,000 that the state paid you?
No, in terms of percentage breakdown of what my annual income is?
Well, just percentage-wise, just in general.
20% maybe?
Okay. So 20% of your practice comes from the state of Iowa Department of Corrections, I take it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you indicate, I believe you indicate, I could be wrong, I just want to make sure I'm right on this, that you are certified, is it in the state of Utah?
In the state of Utah, they have a requirement to be a forensic examiner, yes.
Now, is that part of the National Board of Forensic Board Certified? Is that a part of a national program?
No, Counsel. The American Board of Forensic Psychology is a separate national board. This is just something that the state of Utah requires.
Right. So, if I'm correct, have you ever been board certified as a forensic psychologist?
No, it's not.
Nationally?
No, it's not required in psychology.
No, I didn't ask you whether it was required or not, and I'm sorry if it sounded that way. Have you ever been board certified was my question.
No.
Could you be?
Yes.
Tell the jury what you have to do in order to be board certified as a forensic psychologist.
It's a very labor-intensive process. There's only, last count, probably 300 board-certified plus or minus psychologists in the whole United States. A written examination, you have to submit samples for your peers to review, you sit for an oral exam. It's a very long process.
Is it one of the most rigorous process that psychologists could in fact take?
I would agree.
All right. What about a forensic psychiatrist? Are you familiar with what a forensic psychiatrist is?
I am.
Is that a pretty rigorous exam?
I've never looked at it, Counsel, I don't know.
And how many, to your knowledge, forensic psychiatrists do they have in the United States? Do you know?
I don't.
But that number would be about the same, wouldn't it be about 300 people?
I don't know, Counsel.
Okay. Let me ask you this. At the present time, do you have or have you made any plans toward sitting for what's called the forensic psychologist, the national board that we're talking about?
Yeah, I have, and gone through part of it, and I work 7 days a week the way it is. I really do, and have done for a very long time. When I come to IMCC, it's Friday through Sunday. When I go to New Mexico, it's Sunday through Friday. I consult out of state 2 to 3 times a month. And I got a young family, I just don't have time to participate in it.
Have you ever taken it?
Oh, yeah.
And have you succeeded on parts of it?
Yes.
And have you not succeeded on parts of it?
Yes.
And the parts you've not succeeded on, would you tell us whether or not that has to do with evaluation of individuals, what their mental state was at a particular time?
It's just a peer review of your reports, passing the written exam, and once you do those, you sit for your oral examination. I didn't make it to the oral examination.
You say you did not?
I did not.
Okay. Do you disclose that on your CV?
No.
And how many times, sir, have you tried to be successful on these tests?
Just the one time.
And when was that? When was the last time you tried?
Guesstimate, maybe 2010.
And is it your testimony here today that you have not taken any part of the test since 2010?
Yeah, thereabouts in that ballpark. That's correct.
Could have been a little bit later than that?
Maybe, yeah.
Like when?
2011.
In the state of Utah, do they have any board-certified psychologists that you're aware of as part of the national board?
They may have a couple up in Salt Lake City.
Okay. And what about in the state of Iowa? Do they have any, to your knowledge, forensic, board-certified forensic psychologists in the state of Iowa?
None that I'm aware of.
And they have none working with you, is that correct?
I'm sorry, Counsel?
They have none working with you?
Correct.
All right. And you know Dr. Anderson, don't you?
Arnold Anderson?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I do.
And you work together at the same facility from time to time?
We work at the same facility, but I really don't see him.
When you say you really don't see him, I don't know what, you mean you see him or you don't see him?
I've seen him walking to the car one time. Again, I come in on a Friday through Sunday, and Dr. Anderson, I don't think he's ever there around those times, so.
So is it your testimony then that you fly out from Utah to Iowa to do work for the state of Iowa?
I fly to Las Vegas, yes.
You fly to Las Vegas to Iowa to do work in Iowa, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I noticed in your report, the way you prepared it, it was very detailed as the way you read it back to Ms. Linus on direct examination. Would you agree? It was pretty detailed.
I try to make as accurate a account of what I gleaned from the interview as possible for all parties to review.
Okay. And that's pretty important, isn't it?
Yes.
And what you want to do is make sure, as a matter of fact, it was so detailed that you put the ahs and the ums in. Is that correct?
Yes.
It almost looked like a recording.
Yes.
But it's not. It's actually you typing.
Me typing as fast as I can, yes.
All right. And your report, you agree, is pretty detailed.
Yeah, I believe so.
And it's important that you include factors that you want people down the road to see. Is that correct?
Yes, for all to review.
Let me ask you the first question on that point. why did you put 60,000 emails, text messages as being exchanged in your report?
It's something Mr. Kozak has shared with me.
Did you verify it anywhere?
I did not.
But 60,000 text messages within a period of 3 months or 4 months would be pretty high, right?
There's some busy figures, yes.
Yeah, did you ever figure out how many text messages that would be a day over the period of time you'd interviewed him?
I did not.
Well, if he was so candid, even that kind of astounds a person probably like yourself who's experienced in this area, right?
Yeah, I was surprised.
Well, why would you take that as being accurate?
It's something that Mr. Kozak shared with me.
Did you use that as a factor in making an assessment?
No.
Okay. So the number of emails was not important to you at all?
The number of texts, no. I
Okay,
reviewed what was available to text, but yeah.
Okay. And you said it wasn't important, but the point is that to send that many text messages within that period of time, you couldn't sleep.
I don't know. I don't know how it can be scientifically tested, but okay.
Well, then it adds to my point that you agree that it would be important to know when these messages were sent, and did this lack of sleep, perhaps from sending these messages, come into play, into what happened?
I think the text messages are an important piece of the information, sure.
Okay. But 60,000 text messages would be even a more important piece of the puzzle, wouldn't it?
I think from a defense perspective, I think so, yes.
Sir, I'm talking about from a doctor who is a psychologist who is reviewing it.
Yeah. It's one data point that I would consider reviewing, yes.
Do you think you might have made a mistake on that?
No.
Okay. Now, you testified on direct examination also, and then this goes to the completeness of your report. At one point, you asked Mr. Kozak, should he contact other members of his family? You remember testifying to that on direct examination?
I did.
Where is that in your report?
Page 21?
All right, on page 21, you said it was the third day that you went in.
Second day, counsel.
Oh, I thought on the first time when you testified, okay.
So on March 18th of the...
On page 21 of your report?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so with regards to contacting his family, friends, former employer, etc., the defendant stated, in quotations, yeah, I think I'm going to pass, period, end quotations.
With regard to who contacted them?
Myself.
Does it say that?
No. But I mentioned that to him,
Excuse
yes.
me, your answer was no, right?
Correct.
Okay. As a matter of fact, did you ask if he should contact his lawyer?
I encouraged him
No.
to contact you,
Did
but
you?
I did not know.
No. Did you ask him to contact his lawyer?
I did.
And where do you have that?
I don't have it there.
It's not in your report.
Correct.
Did you try to contact me?
No.
Did you request any information from me?
No.
Now, looking at your practice, and you say you're a solo practitioner, you would agree that if you're going to evaluate someone, you want as much information from that person as possible. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And I believe you said that also in your direct response to direct examination. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. In addition to that, the test in this case, by your own opinion, were not valid, some of them.
Yes.
Okay. Now, these tests that were not valid, let's talk about those first. Do you examine someone solely on the basis, reach a diagnosis of a person solely on the basis of the test? That's the first question. The test that you've listed that you administered to Mr. Kozak, do you form an opinion solely on the basis of those tests?
No, absolutely not.
Does anyone?
No.
In your profession?
No.
Okay. Does a board-certified forensic psychiatrist, based upon what you know about them, not psychiatrists, board-certified forensic psychologists do that, solely on the basis of the test?
I hope not.
All right. Is that a no-no in the profession?
Yeah.
Okay. But what if, in point of fact, the tests you administer are simply invalid? What do you do?
You don't make interpretations.
Did you make an interpretation based upon any of these tests?
I made interpretations on the MCMI and the SIMS, but not on the MMPI because that was invalid.
All right, let's talk about the two that you made the formulate an opinion on. Okay, one we cross out, right? It didn't work, it was invalid, and you agree with that?
I agree, yes.
Okay. Now, let's look at the other two. Now, the one that you excluded, can it make a diagnosis of, let's say, any type of disorder?
We're not to rely on psychological testing to make diagnosis.
Right.
No.
All right. So it wouldn't have helped you to make a diagnosis, you would agree?
Correct.
All right. So let's go to the other two then that are remaining, that are not invalid, that you administered. Of those two, are you indicating, and correct me if I'm wrong, that of the two, perhaps one might show some, what did it show?
If you're referring to the MCMI-3, again, I made some cautious interpretations on that profile. It's a questionable validity, and I state that. It's something that...
Why?
Well, we have somebody who's being very self-revealing and over-reporting of symptomatology.
This test, which is a psychological test, you would agree would be taken, I believe it was March.
Yes.
The incident happened in June 12th of 2015. June 12th of 2015, is that correct?
Correct.
Your test is March of 2000, I'm not saying your test, the test you administered is 2016, is that correct? How many months later?
Correct, counsel, and I know what you're getting at.
Well, no, you don't. Maybe I don't even know, and maybe you inspired me, but anyway, I don't think you know what I'm getting at. So let's follow, let me keep going, please, if you don't mind. So, it's how many months later?
It looks like 9 months.
All right. Would you agree that oftentimes in your profession in the administering of these tests to your own patients, that in fact matters change, that their score would be different?
Yes, it can
All
change.
right. All right. That's with your own patients.
Sure.
And as part of your practice as a solo practitioner, you factor things like that in, don't you? Because you may administer tests now, you administer 8, 9 months later, the results might be different.
Yes.
You agree?
Mm-hmm.
And that's yes.
Yes.
And that's true with anyone, is that correct?
Correct.
Part of what you do as a psychologist is that over a period of time, you may administer the same or a similar test to your own patients to see if, in fact, you can use that in helping you help the patient. Would you agree?
Yes.
All right. But in this case, with regard to Mr. Kozak, you would agree that the test that you're talking about now, we're talking about the 3, I think, was only administered one time.
Yes.
All right. So did you have a baseline to work from with regard to him, Mr. Kozak, that you would normally use in your private practice?
Baseline functioning prior to, I did not.
All right. So let's go now to the 3rd test that we talked about. What would that be?
I believe it's the SIM, Structured Inventory of Beleaguered Symptoms.
All right. And were there problems with that test?
There were some scale elevations there, counsel, but I've seen worse.
Okay. And the scale elevation is, how can a high school kid with a high school education learn in 9 months to manipulate, if that's what you're saying, did he manipulate the test score?
No, he just responded in certain directions. He didn't attempt to manipulate, he just simply over-reported, so.
Right, and you used the example of the over-reporting, such as you bumping your knee, and you gave the jury 3 different examples of it. But is that the same thing as taking a psychological test?
No, maybe that example didn't quite work as well. I can
And
give you
tell the jury why that example didn't work it well and why it might be misleading.
Well, I don't know that it's misleading. It's a concrete example of how to get them to understand. They're certainly not psychologists. It's a very concrete example of giving them something to try to understand.
Well, why don't you give them another example that would fit that a little bit better in terms of...
Sure, I appreciate that, Counsel.
Thank you. I appreciate
So,
it.
let's pretend, being a Hawkeye fan here, let's pretend that my Hawkeyes beat the Cyclones, you're a disgruntled Cyclone fan. You go out that night, try to blow off some steam, you get a little drunk, you get picked up, you get pulled over for DUI, you get a simple assault, you're thrown in the can. Your attorney says, let's go for a diminished capacity offense. You come and you see me. On your way here in the drive over, you think, you know, if I have to take some paper and pencil stuff, maybe I can just look a little iller than I am, more sick. So if he has me do some paper and pencil stuff, I'll endorse some items a little bit that makes me maybe a little more ill than I truly am. Maybe I'll gain some leniency from the court, from those parties involved. Maybe the doctor will have some sympathy on me.
Let me ask you this question. You had every opportunity to ask Mr. Kozak those questions about the testing. As part of someone who's working for the state, who walks in to administer a test for him, you could have asked him those questions, couldn't you?
What type of questions, Counsel?
Yes, did someone prepare you for the questions? Are you changing your mind? Are you doing something different? You could have asked him that just like you asked him about the details of this incident, couldn't you?
I still don't understand what questions you're asking me.
The questions related to, is he exaggerating? Is he overreacting? You could have asked him those questions.
Sure, I guess I could have.
Did you?
No.
But here's a person who you said, you told the jury earlier, he was very candid, he would answer all your questions. 2 other psychiatrists have testified exactly this, one psychiatrist and, let's say 2 psychiatrists, not 2 other psychologists, said he was very candid. You read the report from the, I believe, Detective Ron, who talked about how candid he was. As a matter of fact, you said he had no filter. That's how you described him. So could you have asked him these questions about whether or not he was exaggerating and why?
Why didn't I? That's a good question.
No, I didn't ask you why. I said you could have asked him those questions. Could you not?
Yeah, and as clinicians, we're
Well, so the
terrible
answer
at
is yes.
judging
Is the answer
whether
yes?
somebody is a...
Excuse me, is the answer yes?
Yes.
Now, you indicated, did you not, and let me make sure I understand this, that you have no cases pending in Iowa that you are now working on for the state of Iowa?
No, I never said
All
that,
right.
Counsel.
That's what I wanted to make sure you could clear that. But you still have the contract with the state of Iowa. Is that correct?
I do.
All right. Where you work for the Department of Corrections.
Yes.
What you meant is that in terms of what, private cases or something like that, you have some additional private cases in Iowa? Is that what you meant? And I don't need to know the name of them or anything like that.
I don't have any private cases right now. I have 2 criminal responsibility evaluations that are going on in the state, but they came through the DOC.
Department of Corrections.
Yes.
All right. Have you ever done any work for, in the state of Iowa, for defendants?
Yes.
You have?
Yes,
at the request of the defendant's lawyer?
yes.
All right. And that's through DOC also?
No,
Was that through private
privately,
sources?
privately
right?
retained.
All right. And how long have you done that?
Past few years.
Okay. And that's in Iowa also, is that correct?
Yes,
All right. And you also, and correct me if I'm wrong, you do, in 5 other states, you do the same thing, is that correct?
yes.
Would you agree that your biggest contract, and correct me if I'm wrong, is in Iowa? With regard to state government?
Probably not.
Or what state would that be?
It's probably close between New Mexico and Iowa.
And do you do the same type of work for New Mexico for the state?
I do.
All right. And it's for the Department of Corrections there?
Department of Health, I think it is, Counsel.
Is that work with the prison system or something?
It's through the state hospital.
Through the state hospital?
Yes,
All right. And that's not related to criminal cases, or is it not?
it's all criminal, psych, legal cases.
All right. So then, through 2 states, if 20% is from Iowa working for the state, 20% would be through New Mexico working for the state?
Yes,
Did you say New Mexico?
yes.
Okay. So about 40% of your income would come from state government?
Fair assessment.
Okay. Now, I want to go through the information you read, but not in detail, much like Ms. Linus chose not to, but did you get any information from any other source than what was delivered to you by the state of Iowa and your interview with Mr. Kozak?
Just what's listed on the page, no.
So you didn't get any information, you would agree, from his wife?
Correct,
You didn't get any information from his mother?
correct,
You didn't get any information from his sister?
correct,
You didn't get any information from co-workers who were friends of his?
correct.
You did not interview Cy, his boss, or Wendy Robbins, his boss?
That is correct.
Okay. Were you aware that there was an incident where he had a disagreement with Ms. Robbins when she approached him about something?
I don't believe so, Counsel.
I'm sorry.
I don't believe so, Counsel.
Okay. Were you aware of an incident where Cy, his boss, approached him, indicated that he was going to give him at one point a written reprimand, and if he violated the policy of not talking to Ms. Farrington again, he was going to be terminated?
He had mentioned that in the interview, yes.
Okay. And did you know at the same time that he was going to be threatened to be terminated, let's see, by Ms. Farrington, that also she was emailing him? You've checked to find out that that was the case, right?
No, I didn't have that.
You were unaware of that?
Correct.
Did I say emailing? I meant texting. Were you aware? I want to make sure I asked the question correctly.
Restate your question for me.
Okay. With regard to text messages, were you aware that at the same time she was sending messages to his employer saying that he was bothering her, she was in fact also texting him to meet him on occasion?
I have no knowledge of that.
None whatsoever?
I have knowledge of some of the texts, yes, but not of what I think you're referencing.
Right. If you had knowledge that this was in fact happening, would that change your opinion at all about his reaction under these circumstances?
I suppose it could.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Were you aware of how much sleep he'd gotten the night before this incident happened?
I had asked him about sleep, and he said he didn't sleep very well.
Right. He said he got up, I believe you indicated on direct examination, at 3 a.m.?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you ask him, did he go back to sleep since then?
I believe he said he stared at the ceiling.
Okay. And if you go back looking at his text messages the night before, did you happen to do that and compare how often text messages were going back and forth for the nights preceding that to see was he sleeping?
I didn't look at the exact time. I just looked at the exchanges between them.
Okay. And would you agree, let's say for even your conclusion where you find I think a DSM-5 301-89, diagnosis of other specific personality disorder with mixed personality features, that a lack of sleep could exaggerate even that diagnosis.
Sure.
How would it exaggerate it?
Anybody that is sleep deprived, as you know, doesn't function as optimally as you do on a day-to-day basis. Sleep deprivation can do lots of different things.
But I'm talking about sleep deprivation with your diagnosis, that the finding that you made, the sleep deprivation exaggerate that specific finding, DSM-5 301.89.
Could it? Yeah, but I don't know how it might.
Did you run any analysis to find out?
No, there was no formal sleep study or anything like that done.
Did you talk to any of your colleagues to try to find out?
No, I couldn't.
Well, let me ask you this. When you said you couldn't, you think you were prohibited by some source to contact a colleague and try to run an opinion by them?
I thought you were talking about his colleague, counsel. I'm sorry. You're referring to my colleagues.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't.
Do you have experience yourself to be able to evaluate with this particular diagnosis that you even found as to how the sleep deprivation could react to that condition?
I'm unaware of any known research on the topic.
But you didn't look for it, did you?
I didn't. No.
Okay. Now, did he tell you that he also had a migraine that same day?
He did.
Are you a specialist in evaluating how migraine headaches could impact someone who had the same diagnosis that you found at 301.89?
I'm not a neurologist.
Did you contact a neurologist to try to determine with the migraine that he suffered, along with the lack of sleep, could that have impacted his actions?
I did not.
Why didn't you?
I thought the case was pretty straightforward in what we had gone through.
So are you saying, as you sit here today, that a migraine and a lack of sleep that he told you had, including the DSM-5 301.89 diagnosis that you made, do you know if those factors could have impacted him that day? That's my question on June 12th of 2015.
In my professional opinion, I didn't think they were impacting the legal issue I was asked.
Based upon what research that you did knowing that information?
Based on my clinical interview, behavior observations, and the records review.
You made the statement that you were not a neurologist.
That's
With one of
correct.
your own patients, is it your thought that if your own patient gave you the same information with regard to a migraine headache, a lack of sleep the night before, problems on the job, that you would not consult a psychiatrist to assist you with making a diagnosis in this case?
I would refer them to the appropriate medical professional,
Who would you refer them to?
psychiatrist and/or neurologist.
As a matter of fact, you could have made that suggestion in your report based upon the information you gathered. Isn't that true?
I'm not here to treat him,
No,
I'm only here to do an evaluation.
No,
That's
I-
blurring the lines there, counsel.
Well, sir, we're talking about for the purposes of making the evaluation. We're not talking about treatment, doctor. We're talking about for the purposes of making a complete evaluation. You could have done that. Isn't that true?
Sure.
And you didn't do it.
Correct.
And you had all that information in front of you.
Yes.
Did you take a look at the text messages, Doctor?
I did.
And after looking at the text message, did you make some summary thought in your mind, based upon your experience, background, as to whether or not the text messages impacted Mr. Kozak?
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this time as that's vague in terms of what impact means.
Sustained.
Which text messages did you review?
Text prior to his going out with his wife on a date to Jurassic World. The following day.
Well, let me ask you, that might be better this way. Did you go back to June 8th and look at the text messages?
Whatever was made available, counsel, I don't know exactly the date.
Okay, and did you follow forward from June 8th straight through to June 12th with regard to the text messages?
That's a fair
All
statement.
right. And in those text messages, did you make any assessment of the relationship between Ms. Farrington and Mr. Kozak?
Yes.
Okay. What was that?
As Mr. Kozak had articulated to me, is that he had an emotional sort of relationship with her that was typically, it was done over the phone. Again, he described it as an interesting relationship. The text messages that were sent back and forth were somewhat sexual in nature, and also expressing love between one another.
Okay. And I believe on direct examination, you indicated that my question for you with regard to those text messages and what your ultimate diagnosis was of Mr. Kozak, did you think the text messages had any impact on the diagnosis that you made?
There were a data point I considered, but it wasn't, everything I put my chips on, just the text messages in and of themselves.
Okay. And did you see what I would call the full text messages, and what I mean by that, the redacted version or the unredacted version of the text messages?
Redacted.
You've never seen the unredacted version?
Correct.
And as you sit here today, is it your testimony you've never seen them?
Correct. That's what I believe, yes.
Now, if the other text messages, I believe you indicated, he told you there were 60,000 roughly, and put that in and accepted that. Do you believe at this point, Dr. Copeland, that it would have assisted you at all in the evaluation to have seen and reviewed the additional, let's say, 58,000 messages?
Yeah, certainly would be another data point for me to review, yes.
And it would be something that a person in your position in doing evaluations would find significant, is that correct?
Would be relevant.
Okay. Would it also have been important to you in doing your evaluation to have seen text messages for other people who were interacting with Mr. Kozak during this period of time? Would that have been important to you?
Possibly.
Did you ever ask him, or did you ever ask to review any of those text messages from other people?
No.
Now, let's go to this one issue of the tests that were being conducted. I think we've gone through all three tests down. With the fact that the tests were invalid, and some you believe might have shown some exaggeration, and you stated what you did with regard to that, do you fall back then on, and I don't mean to minimize your work in this area, but do you fall back on your ability and skill as a pure doctor of psychology to analyze a person at that point? Are those the skills you begin to rely on?
One part of it, counsel, yes.
Right. What's the other part?
Behavior observations, record review, anything learned in the clinical interview, and, yeah.
And so would you agree with me that the more invalid the tests are, or if the tests are somewhat invalid, it causes you to fall back on the skills that you have in, let's say, as you say, the observations, watching how somebody reacts to something, looking in their eyes, see how they respond to you. Is that correct?
Yes, and,
All right.
yes.
All right. And that's the skill level you begin to use at that point. Is that right?
Sure,
Now, did you sit there while he was taking all of the tests?
I did.
All right. And if you clear out the test time, how much time did you spend with him to complete this interview that was typed up?
Probably around 4 hours, I think. Mr. Kozak and I spent together on both March 17th and March 18th.
All right. And the testing were the other days, is that right?
We broke it up a little bit. We did, I believe, a little testing on the first day and then finished up on the second day.
And so for this actual typing part here, which begins, this interview begins on page 9, that Ms. Linus took you through, and ended on page 22. Start on page 9, ends on page 22. How long did that take?
I don't know, counsel, because we also included a clinical interview of going through that stuff. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, but you described how, I believe, just briefly, that you were actually typing it.
I was,
All right. And I assume just a computer sitting there?
yes.
All right. And that's when you were making your observations at that point?
Observations from the minute I said hello to him to the very last day where I said goodbye and good luck.
Okay. And when you were doing this, during the interview, absent the test that we've already talked about, you are sitting here then making your analysis to formulate your opinion. Would that be a fair statement?
No, I think while Alex was filling out questionnaires, I might have been, I think I was reviewing some of his records, things like that.
So you weren't watching him the whole time? You were reading records?
The majority of behavior observations had basically already occurred at that point, so, yeah.
So the observation that you formulated your opinion on, absent the test, had already been made. Is that your
We
testimony?
had
Okay.
hours of being together, yeah.
Okay. And when you make those observations absent the test, what factors sitting there do you use to reach your conclusion that helps you formulate your opinion? Tell us. What are they?
Again, clinical interview, behavioral observations.
Such as what? What did you see about Mr. Kozak?
I thought he was very open with me, very honest. I thought he maintained good attention and concentration. His memory was grossly intact. He didn't appear to be responding to any sort of hallucinations. He didn't make any sort of delusional statements or anything along that line. He answered questions very directly with me. Didn't appear to have any comprehension issues. He was a very fast test taker.
Okay, so you made that opinion based upon your observations of him as to the diagnosis without the test. Would that be a fair statement?
No, we still had some testing that we could look at. Why was there over-reporting? So as a clinician, you still got to consider those factors.
Right, and you do consider those factors as you put them in your report. My question, though, is when you get to the point where you put down you have to approach the test with caution, you really have nothing left except what, as you described, would be your observations 9 months later.
Well, I have to respectfully disagree on some
Okay.
level, counsel,
Okay.
because we got the clinical interview to go, that we, so there's other
Absolutely.
things there as well.
Okay. And would you agree, which was the question I think you kind of anticipated sometime earlier, that 9 months later, after an incident like this, the test results would not have been the same had they been given on the 13th?
Yes, the psychological testing is about present day. So if I was to test you, that is about present day today. It doesn't tell me what a person's mental state or psychological functioning was on the day of the alleged crime.
Right. And that's the exact point I wanted to make. And the question is, can a board-certified forensic psychologist do that type of work, projected back?
With psychological testing?
Yes.
I would hope not.
All right. Can a board-certified forensic psychologist, just on the interview, project back to what happened on June 12th?
We get asked to do that all the time.
Did you understand my question?
Maybe better state.
Okay. Can a board certified, you indicated you're not national board certified, is that correct?
Correct.
You've taken the test, but so far been unsuccessful.
Correct.
So my question is, can a board certified forensic psychiatrist do that?
Psychiatrist or psychologist?
Psychiatrist, first of all.
Evaluate a person's mental state?
Yes, by looking at the information and then projecting back to that incident and make some analysis as to what they were doing on that particular date, what they were, their mental state was on that date.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Now, can a psychologist do that? Forget about the forensic part. Can a psychologist do that?
I would strongly advise them not to, as a
Okay.
general psychologist.
Right. Now, the next question. We've knocked off 2 categories. Let's go to the third one. Can a non-board certified forensic psychologist make that call?
Yes. Absolutely.
I don't have any further questions.
Ms. Linus, redirect.
Thank you. Being asked about testing and how it might change at times, what is it that would lead to a test being different on one day than later?
We know from the tests that were administered that some of the scales may change because of various situations, again, because of certain things that have transpired in their life, a loss of a loved one, or they started drinking heavily, or things of that nature. Those sort of variables, the mood variables, okay, what we talked about earlier, the state variables, they can change. But if you look at some of the other core variables, like your personality stuff, remember, they are enduring patterns of behavior. Those sort of things will not change. In fact, when you look at the empirical data, the research that's out there, that test retests on the MMPI or MCMI, you're going to get consistent patterns on certain things. And so, yes, while it is true that these tests are about present day functioning, there are also scales that speak to more enduring patterns of behavior as well.
Is that what you're trying to do, is figure out enduring patterns of behavior as well as what the condition was of the patient at the time of the crime being committed?
Well, you know, in the criminal responsibility evaluation, behaviors are so important. And I say that because a lot of times the behaviors that you look at that you won't maybe get in the actual interview will be gleaned in the records that you review. So what the witnesses said, what the arrest records are saying, those sort of things are important as part of the analysis. So there were quite a few behaviors here. For example, parking close to the front of the mall entrance. That is a behavior that is meaningful. Other aspects of this alleged event that I described to you earlier are also important behavioral variables. So looking at a person's thoughts, what's going on in their mind, their feelings, and what they're feeling emotionally, and then the behavioral aspect of how they carry out. In some instances, and maybe in some cases, really carries quite a bit of weight, whereas maybe just the thoughts and the emotions might carry more weight. And so those are important as we look at them and do them in criminal responsibility examinations.
And just for asking about your report, the part that you typed and tried to have kind of verbatim about what the defendant said, was when you were interviewing him regarding what had happened at the time of the crime?
Yes, and before I sat down with the examinee, I explained to them I'm going to use my typewriter or my laptop because my handwriting is awful, and so I'm going to type. I'm actually a pretty fast typer, and so, but there may be aspects, times when I ask you to maybe slow down a little bit, and a lot of times what I like to do is while they're telling me and I'm typing, I'm actually typing and then speaking out loud what they're saying so that they can then go ahead and correct me if I say something wrong. So the examinee can hear what I'm typing, and I'll pause sometimes and say, is that an accurate account based on what I've said? And in this case, we had no issues.
Your report also includes, though, the history that Mr. Kozak gave, including medical histories, psychological history, all the other kinds of questions you asked in more in summary form. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your observations of what his speech was like, all your other clinical observations of him, those are more in summary form and not verbatim of the exact behavior you observed?
Yeah, they're a synopsis of what I gleaned during my interview with Mr. Kozak.
When you were asked about the text messages, were you ever asked to evaluate Andrea Farrington?
I was not.
Reading the text messages that Andrea Farrington had with other people, would that have helped you assess what the defendant's state of mind was at a certain date?
No.
He did tell you about a text message he had with Jessica, his friend Jessica?
He did.
And did he include telling you about how he was thinking of getting his gun at that time?
Yeah.
All that?
Yes.
And he told you about the specifics of the last text message or the last few text messages he had with Andrea Farrington?
He did.
And those were fairly consistent with the text you saw?
Yes.
Were you aware that only a portion of the text messages of Ms. Farrington could be obtained?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And the redacted ones you saw did include the ones, though, between Ms. Farrington and the defendant?
Yes.
Would those seem to be the most relevant ones for you to be able to assess what the defendant's state of mind was back on June 12, 2015?
Yes.
Did you think you needed to see any other text messages to make a diagnosis?
No.
You were asked about the sleep deprivation and migraine. Did you feel you needed to consult with a neurologist or a psychiatrist to make a determination about Mr. Kozak's state of mind last June 12, 2015?
Based on those factors, no.
So you don't think the migraine or not having a lot of sleep the night before were a factor in what his psychiatric condition or mental situation was back on June 12?
In my professional opinion on this particular case, no.
And even if you couldn't get the text messages ever from February, et cetera, do you think that you had, if you had the most recent text messages, that might be more relevant than text messages that have been several months old?
Possibly. I mean, we don't really know because I wasn't able to review them.
You were asked repeatedly about not asking the same questions regarding Mr. Kozak overstating or exaggerating his symptoms. Why didn't you ask him?
Well, what we know from the empirical literature is we as clinicians are terrible at judging whether somebody's pulling our leg or not. That's one of the reasons why we got these pretty cool psychological tests that can tell us. And so, it's one thing that sets us apart from every other discipline out there, mental health discipline, is psychological testing. And they're used in many situations, as I alluded to earlier. And so it's a very important issue to use.
And Mr. Parrish asked you repeatedly about working for the state and working for the Department of Corrections. Is that the context, though, in which you were hired basically to give a neutral opinion or make an assessment independent of who is asking you to do it?
I was contacted by a co-counsel. NADA had contacted me, and we had telephone consultation, talked about the case. It seemed like a good fit, and she was wondering if I was available to retain my services. I said, yeah, I'm a little bit busy, but I can certainly try and work it in for you guys.
But working for the state of Iowa, for the Department of Corrections, doesn't influence, does it, what your assessment or determination is going to be?
No, I get paid either way. It doesn't matter if I call them insane, competent, incompetent. There are cases that the treatment team sends to me, and I'll turn them away and say they're just not ready to go back to court yet. I don't have a problem doing that.
So the fact that you work for the state, does that influence in any way what you did in this case?
No, I've been with them since 2007, and whether we have an opinion that helps them or not, they've kept me around for that long.
You were asked about some facts about suggesting that if Andrea Farrington was complaining about the defendant, at the same time she was texting the defendant. Do you know anything about the dates of when any of those happened?
I don't.
So if they happened on different occasions, a week apart or a couple weeks apart, would that change your assessment at all?
No.
The fact that they happened on the same day change your opinion at all?
No.
Did Mr. Kozak report to you that he was kind of basically getting angrier as the day went on June 12th, as opposed to it suddenly being something that happened immediately prior to the time of him shooting Andrea Farrington?
Again, he was seething mad. Again, to use his own terms, it was the volcano. He seemed to be getting more angry as the day progressed.
In fact, on page 9 of your report, you talk about how you've been texting. This would be kind of in the middle large paragraph. They called it off the night. He was talking about, I think, June 11th. I was curious what changed your mood again, and at that point is when things really started to heat up. Does that appear to be when kind of the onset was of his anger? You could explain that.
Mr. Kozak was having, as he said, some insatiable curiosity and wanted to ask Andrea what had changed in their relationship. And at that point, he says, because we had gone from cold a week before to back to our usual, back to the love you type shit, And then, of course, we called it off that night, and he was curious as to why her mood had changed. And then he came to this conclusion that she was no longer interested in him, and that there was somebody else possibly involved with her.
I want to go back to the testing a little bit. So the MMPI was invalid, is that right?
It's invalid based on several of the scales. Several of the scales show consistently that there is over-reporting, that the gentleman is trying to over-report symptoms, magnify them, if you will. If you look at the validity scales, tell you whether the person is under-reporting or over-reporting. In this case, we had over-reporting in a very direct way. The code type that comes up, if we were to look at the code type, it's a 7-8 code type. I won't bore you with that. But the 7-8 code type comes up around 31% of the time in MMPI profiles that are over-reporting. Okay, so the 7-8 code type, 31% of the time when you get symptom exaggeration. The 6-8 code type is the most common, around 45%, and you find that in the Roger Green's book on the MMPI. So 31% of the time, second most common.
So it wasn't like the test or something was wrong with the test, it was a matter of how Mr. Kozak answered that made it show that the results, if you tried to interpret them, would not be valid. Is that accuracy?
Correct.
And when you were talking to the defendant about whether you wanted to talk to other people, did you do that on the night before? I think it was on March 17th, is that right?
March 17th, I closed the day by offering that to Mr. Kozak.
Did you talk about doing releases, things like that?
I did. I said I had releases right here. Think about it. Call your attorney if you need to. We'll talk about it first thing in the morning. And the first thing that he said in the morning is that I'm just going to go ahead and pass. And I said, I respect that, and we'll continue on.
When you were interviewing Mr. Kozak, did he talk to you about why he didn't go and actually talk to Andrea Farrington in person on June 12th? And I'm looking on page 11 of your report.
Right in the middle there, counsel.
Yes.
He says, first of all, I asked him, was there anything unusual about this event? And he says, I was walking around, or walking my rounds like on autopilot. You know, I was not completely focused on the here and now. You know, in that movie Click, where he fast forwards in his life and then he goes back to view those moments with a blank stare and responds when prompted. Other than that, they're there in that moment.
And does he go on to talk about this, talking to Andrea Farrington? Or not talking?
Let's see. Yeah, he continued saying that he was going to approach Andrea on that day, but that she was surrounded by a couple people, I guess, at work there. He decided to not have a conversation with her, given the fact that, there was this relationship that nobody really knew about or was supposed to know about, so he didn't want to put her in an awkward position. He said, I didn't want to put her on the spot because it would have been embarrassing for her. So I never got a chance to talk to her. And I asked him what day, and he then clarified June 12th. And I asked him further, I said, tell me about your feelings at that point. He said he was feeling isolated, really isolated and hurt, unreproachable, like the situation was completely out of my grasp. I couldn't talk to the only person in the situation, period.
Even before that, did he talk about how he was feeling in terms of reflecting on what was going on?
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, page 11, just fifth paragraph down. We were asking about going with security grounds.
I believe you're saying where he's very scattered, is that correct, Counsel? And so I asked Mr. Kozak, tell me about your thoughts as you're performing your security rounds. He says very scattered. It was mainly about reflecting upon the whole relationship. Asking myself, was any of that real or was it just some sort of game? Analyzing, just going back over everything. Just trying to convince yourself there was something to the whole thing, period.
Did he go on and tell you about some further thoughts at the top paragraph of page 13, if you could look there, about kind of what he was thinking when he got his gun?
I believe that's ask and answer, Judge.
I believe that was asked in the direct counsel.
Thank you.
Also stating the judge.
Did he indicate to you when he made the decision to get the gun?
I believe it was at work at the mall. He left some of his belongings there at work and then decided to leave for his home.
Did you feel you needed to do anything else with Mr. Kozak, any other testing or anything, to be able to make an accurate diagnosis, an accurate assessment about his functioning back on June 12th of 2015?
I was very pleased with what we accomplished in almost 8 hours of interviewing and testing.
Did that have to do with the fact that he was so open and didn't have that filter and told you everything that you're asking?
That certainly didn't hurt.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Counsel.
Free cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to read something to you, and I want you to tell me who this person is. These individuals often lead solitary lives, but they want to become accepted and involved with other people, a desire that is blocked by an intense fear of being rejected and humiliated. They perceive themselves as socially inept, inferior, and inadequate, and they continually undervalue their achievements. In addition to fear and self-criticism, they frequently feel alone, empty, and isolated. To protect themselves from these fears, they restrict their social environments, constantly maintaining their distance and privacy. This is unfortunate because it undercuts future opportunities of enhancing relationships and places them in a solitary world where they are more likely to reactivate memories of past social rejections. In addition, they rely extensively on fantasy gratification of their needs for affection and anger. Who is that person that you wrote that about?
Mr. Kozak.
I'm going to read this to you. Page 11. I was walking my rounds like on autopilot. Who said that to you?
Mr. Kozak.
Felt isolated. That was really isolated and hurt. Unreproachable, like the situation was completely out of my grasp. I couldn't talk to the only person in the situation. Who's that person making that statement?
Mr. Kozak.
As a matter of fact, the test that you gave him, that you sent, did you have to send it off or scan it in to get judged by a computer, read by a computer?
Scored out of my office.
All right, in a computer system?
Yes.
That's what it said about him, didn't it?
Aspects of it, yes.
Well, sir, these are your words, written as a result of that test, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Ms. Linus, anything further?
Can you just explain where that first quote came from?
Which quote, counsel?
I'm sorry.
It's kind of been a long day.
Yes, sorry. Just going to ask you about the first quote that Mr. Parrish asked you about and your assessment of him being alone and things like that. Is that under the MCMI 3 interpretation?
The long paragraph that Mr. Parrish read to me is from the MCMI 3, correct?
Does any of that change your impression of what the defendant was capable of and doing and your diagnosis of him back from June of 2015?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Parrish?
No, Your Honor, nothing.
Doctor, you're excused. You may step down.
Thank you.
Ms. Linus, do you have any further rebuttal witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the state rests.
Mr. Parrish, does the state have any sir rebuttal?
No,
I'm
Your
sorry,
Honor.
the defendant, not the state.
That's it, yeah. Mr. Kozak has no sir rebuttal, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, what this means is we have now finished the submission of the evidence to you. The lawyers and I must confer regarding the instructions that you will be given. I would like to have you come back, please, at 9:30 on Monday morning. I anticipate at that point we will be ready to read the instructions to you. You will also receive a written copy of the instructions, and the attorneys will then present you with their closing arguments. We will be in recess until 9:30 Monday. Please remember your admonition over the course of this recess. Thank you.
Okay.
You can stay seated. Counselor, is there any formal record either of you wishes to make at this time? Ms. Linus?
Nothing at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Parrish?
Your Honor, we would make a motion that the charges be dismissed ordinarily under the position that we've taken, Your Honor, with regard to this case, or the posture I say we've taken with regard to this case. I don't believe that I have any motion to make. What I would do, though, Your Honor, I would re-urge the court to consider our earlier motions that we made with regard to mistrial. I won't restate those because I believe that I would just ask that the court consider them with the full force and effect as if they're made at this time. Other than that, Your Honor, and I can probably answer for it later, but I don't believe that we have a motion that ordinarily I would make in every case like this with regard to a directed verdict or a judgment of acquittal. I just don't see factors in there that would lead to that type of motion at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Parrish. Ms. Linus, does the state resist the renewed motions for mistrial?
Yes, Your Honor. We think that the court has adequately addressed all of the issues that were previously raised. We would ask the court to maintain your previous ruling and deny the motion. Thank you.
The court will stand by its previous denial of the motions. Counsel, is there any other formal record that needs to be made today?
I don't think so, Your Honor, thank you.
I'm not aware of any, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, so we'll go off the record. Ms. Jellison, you are free to head back to Cedar Rapids whenever you're ready to do so. And
She's
would you-
smiling for the record, Your
Would you
Honor.
please tell Janie that she's also free to go as soon as, I think the jurors are probably already gone. Counsel, I want to spend just a few minutes talking about instructions,
We
if
did
we
for,
can.
we did for the exhibits.
Yes.
I think we didn't take any bounds out. Oh, she needs a number, Jen, she needs a number out of there. Which is that? I think it's
Okay.
MM, that's in the card.
Just for a
So let me
second.
give you a couple minutes just to kind of get those things sorted.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
then
Jen.
we can have a preliminary discussion about instructions so that if there's major issues, I can try to address them.
Okay.
I
This-
just,
And then, what we're gonna do, did you get that? We're gonna get the phone numbers. We're gonna pull them out, use our own exhibits from, like we made our own exhibits and pull them out. You might want to look at it. Well, they're gonna be exchanges between, each of the people. We haven't pulled out separately, right? You know what I mean?
Which is, just
Well-
which exhibit it is.
Do we have them right there?
yes.
We can show you. They're not in agreement yet. Well, if you want to stand, you can, and they can part of the record is in the article.
We definitely want to see them. We
Oh,
want to
I
have
think, I
them.
agree, and you should be able to match them up to make sure that they're accurate, yeah.
Okay.
I told the judge to leave the record open and put them in, but what I can do we have another copy to leave at, back at the office? 'Cause I
They
can-
have them in the exhibit
They
notebook.
are,
Oh,
okay. And that's
okay,
what I wanted to
okay.
just make sure.
Which
that-
ones are they?
These are the ones that are gonna be.
T1 through T4. I don't think we have 4.